the invitation. I appreciate that all of you give of your time to support Virginia State Parks, and many of you, your local Virginia State Park as well. So most of you got involved because you have your state park and then also love all state parks. So I thank you for that and for giving your time and your talents and your efforts to support us, both in volunteer activities and also in advocacy for parks. So I'll do just a really high level overview of some park facts. So we do have 41 state parks. That's 3 more than we had 2 years ago. So it is a growing park system. We have over 75,000 acres. And if you haven't had a chance to read the study that we did on the dedicated funding, it's worth a read, because the description of our staffing and our infrastructure and our equipment structure is good information for you to have in your back pocket, especially if you're looking for advocating for parks. We do have $1.2 billion, over $1.2 billion of infrastructure. So you all have probably heard a lot about deferred maintenance backlog. Well, it's not surprising that you have a $270 million deferred maintenance backlog when you have 1.2 something billion in infrastructure. And much of that is historic, a lot of it built by the CCC. We're thankful to have it. We're grateful to be the stewards of it. But caring for all of that is a significant task. And so it's your efforts to help us care for that, and then also to help people understand the complexity of the system and the needs of the system that help us do that. In addition to acres and infrastructure, we care for some of the most historically and recreationally significant resources in the Commonwealth. Jessica, I'm interested to know what your background is.
I have to unmute myself. Grayson Highlands.
That's what I thought, including Grayson Highlands. It just kind of happened that I was saying that as I noticed your background. And so being able to care for these special places is important. We have a staff of, if you count full-time and part-time staff, we have a staff of about 1,500 employees. 1,200 of those employees, fewer in the last couple of years because recruiting has been challenging, but 1,200 of those employees are wage employees. And the vast majority of those are seasonal wage employees. And so staffing is always a concern for Virginia State Parks, as it is all park systems. And our studies showed that we're about 300 staff short. So we're staffed for FTE staff about half of what we should be. Now, if we were fully staffed with FTE staff, we would have fewer wage staff. The reality is that the model of relying heavily on seasonal staff is a challenging model when you have as many overnight facilities as we have. So our increasing reliance on cabins as revenue generators, as we have been encouraged to generate more of our operating funds, has made us more of year-round operations. So we had 7.9 million visitors in 2021. That's up 15% from 2019. So we were up 13.5% in 2020. We gained another 1.5%. So we were all wondering, what would the visitation do? And it has leveled out, but it's stayed. And so we're heavily visited. Our peak is in the summer months, but even in January, which is our slowest month, we have over 200,000 visitors to the system. And so we're not a seasonal operation, we're a year-round operation. And I'll be brief because y'all have other things to talk about. And I know that I and others, when we get talking about things we're passionate about, we can get swept up in them. But I want to touch on a few things. We really appreciate that you all are doing this work to learn to be advocates for the state park system. So once we get into the legislative process, as the agency, our role is really limited. We're not politicians, and we're not lobbyists. We can't be. And our position that we can represent is the position of the governor's office or the secretary's office. And with as many bills as they have and many things as they balance, sometimes it's challenging to get those positions through with the pace of the session. And then also when the governor proposes a budget, that's the budget the governor intended to have. And so the governor's role is to balance all of the things in state government. And so we compete every year against schools and hospitals and medical and public safety and industry, and all of those entities have really strong voices for their needs. And so when we're competing against those things, the governor's role is to balance all of that. And the governor does what they think is best, and they propose a budget. And as we work for the governor, we support what the governor puts forward. But all of those industries have strong voices, and parks doesn't always have a strong voice. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about being in Virginia is that in Virginia, we have one of the strongest voices of any park system I've worked in. And that's because all of you. Virginia's Association for Parks being a strong organization, our local parks friends groups being really strong advocates for their parks. It gives us a voice in conversations that we wouldn't have otherwise as folks are considering those trade-offs, because it's real easy to forget parks. It's not that people don't like parks or don't support parks. It's just easy to forget parks when you're talking about law enforcement and public safety and schools and hospitals and all of those things. So the role of keeping parks relevant and top of mind is something that you all do exceptionally well. And I appreciate you taking the time today to learn some strategies and skills for that. We're able to provide technical information during sessions. So how much would a bill cost? What would it look like to implement a bill? Those kind of questions we can answer, but to be an advocate, we're limited on that. And so I know sometimes when folks have been advocates and they've went to session and they've testified on bills, it can be frustrating if you're testifying on something for parks and the park staff aren't in the room or aren't saying anything. And so that's why I wanted to take the time today to just kind of talk about that, because there's a real separation of what we can do. And in those cases, we can't. And so if you ever find yourself in a room where you're advocating for something for parks and we're being silent, please don't take that as we don't appreciate what you're doing. It's just that our role as civil servants and working in the executive limits what we can do in session. We can't be lobbyists. So I just want to take a few minutes to just kind of give that overview as y'all go into some of the toolbox. And then just again to say, our volunteers and our support organizations are the lifeblood of parks. We've got wonderful staff, and you all know that, and some of you have been that, or at least married to staff. And we have wonderful volunteers that carry work that we couldn't do without them. And all of you who help people remember that we're here whenever the conversation happens with all of the voices in the room. You're an important part of the success of this organization. And it is really appreciated by everyone in parks. I know the leadership team for sure sees all that you do, knows what an asset you are, and on my part as well. I am really encouraged every time I see you. I love that we love the same thing and that we're in this together. We're in the forever business, and we're going to keep parks relevant for us and for our children and grandchildren and their grandchildren. And so the work that we did today is forever work. And I thank you for giving your time and talents to do it. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Tim.
Thank you so very much, Melissa. And you know, your words are golden, and we're here to support you. And I admire state park staff when we are in some of these committee meetings. And you know, you guys have such anti-eye roll command. I don't know how you do it, but we're there for you, and 100%. And we really appreciate. We have the right leader taking us on into the future. We appreciate you. Thank you. To continue on, I talked about what the VAFP, how the VAFP started and what we do. But, really the most important task that I think that the VAFP, the Virginia Association for Parks, has is to represent Friends Group and the thousands of volunteers that serve in Virginia parks, local parks, regional and national parks in the General Assembly. And the hours and hours of volunteer, non-paid advocacy done by VAFP members each year in the General Assembly. I mean, we pay for our own gasoline, our lunch, tolls, even lodging sometimes to advocate for Virginia parks. And when we come together in great numbers and present our concerns and cause to the General Assembly, testifying before the House and Senate committees as a group, we can be successful. In 2002, the VAFP support of non-paid, non-salaried advocates managed to help provide the support needed to get the Virginia General Assembly to approve a huge bond issuance for Virginia state parks. And if you travel outside of your home state park, you'll notice and see the new cabins and discovery centers and the halls that were built with those funds. And more recently, the General Assembly, pushed by the VAFP advocates in 2020, provided for the funding of $33 million+ for Virginia State Park maintenance. But this thing called COVID-19 showed up at the very end of the assembly, and that funding was postponed. All of that funding that was approved was put off. During the 21 assembly or the midsummer assembly, some of those dollars were added back in. We didn't lose all of them, but we just got a tiny share of it. And I think it's becoming quite clear that our current funding program for Virginia state parks just isn't working. We clearly don't have enough staff to adequately perform the duties needed to sustainably maintain our properties and amenities, and we're constantly having to postpone major maintenance and building. In fact, Virginia ranks number 42 of 50 states for state funding from the General Assembly. But even with COVID rampant, as Director Baker said, our attendance was up over 13% in 20, and in 21, 15%. The 2021 General Assembly, so far as I was concerned, was the turning point for state park funding with the passage of Delegate Bobby Orrick's bill 1804, HB 1804, that required the Department of Conservation and Recreation to study possible revenue sources for sustainably funding Virginia state parks. And I couldn't have been happier that happened, because it led the VAFP to take the lead on sustainable fundings for Virginia state parks as our priority for the foreseeable future. It also spun off a very aggressive group of state park advocates and VAFP members to initiate TALO's initiative for sustainable, for park sustainability, or TIPS. Taylor Murphy was unfortunately just recently passed and was part of this group when it began a year ago. But his memory as a natural resources champion for Virginia will carry on, because VAFP will continue on with sustainable funding. As a result of last year's HB 1804 bill, it set a new bill. We had new champions. We found other champions in our legislature, and Senator Marsden sponsored a bill, SB 545, for known as Park Pass, and that was a starting point for sustainable funding. It was new. It was something new to Virginia, hadn't been talked about for years and years. And it looked like we were really gathering some steam for this bill. When we got into the Senate Ag Subcommittee this year, unfortunately, it did not make it through, but it did not make it through on a 7-7 vote with one abstention. That's how close we were. We made that kind of impact this year for sustainable funding. So this is not a dead issue. And in addition to that, another bill that's out there, a very important one, is Senate Bill 672, Valors. And any of you that have been around for, gosh, as long as Jim Klakowitz, for example, who's ancient, at least 300 years old. I think he was Moses' cousin. But anyway, Valors was to promote putting our conservation officers in the Virginia Law Enforcement Officers Retirement Program. We've been in there every year. Well, this year with Senate Bill 672, DMV came on board to try to get their people on, along with our people, and Senator Stewart drafted that bill. That bill was passed by for the year, and they asked for a JLARC study to look at the funding needed and the need for that. So it'll be back again next year. But the real question is, how do we advocate for our desires and our concerns? I mean, advocacy is defined as public support for or a recommendation of a particular cause or policy. And advocacy seeks to ensure that all people are able to have their voice heard on issues that are important to them and protect and promote their rights, have their views and wishes genuinely considered when decisions are being made for their cause. Before I step off, we have a defeat in there. We had a pass by bill. There's still a number of amendments out there for supporting state parks. Governor Northam put $68 million in his outgoing budget that I'm concerned about. I want to keep that in there. That's important money for Virginia state parks and natural resources in Virginia. And that's not a done deal. This is now passed over, and it has to be signed off by our current legislators and our newly elected Governor Youngkin. So it's more important than ever for us to stand up as advocates for state parks and Virginia natural resources to step out and call or write or email our legislators to say, hey, I love my state parks. Governor Northam did a great thing by putting money in the bill for us. Not all that we needed, but money that we need. So please, please keep that money in Governor Youngkin's budget. It's real simple. Pick up the phone. I would reach out to the Senate Finance Committee. I would also reach out to the House Appropriations Committee and make your opinion, your voice known, because it takes more than just one person writing a letter. It takes a village to promote the village, not an individual. So I can't tell you how important that is. You've heard plenty from me tonight. There are a couple of excellent, very smart, fun women on the online. Jessica Bowser and Bonnie Klakowitz, who are just ardent state park advocates. So proud to have them on board and part of the VAFP. And they have some fun for us tonight. How do we talk to a legislator? The good ones and the ones that aren't so excited about what we do. Bonnie, Jessica, you online?
Yes, thank you very much, Tim. I appreciate that. Welcome, everyone. It is so exciting to see all of you here tonight for this advocacy workshop. I'm especially excited. Tim, can you mute yourself? Thank you. I'm especially excited because the feedback that we received from your registrations indicated that 70% of you said that this is your first advocacy event. So I was absolutely thrilled by that. And I wanted to say, I recognize you all and take a moment just to say thank you for taking this first step to advocating for our parks. So I'm going to share a slideshow. Okay, does everybody see that? Did I get a thumbs up from someone? Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So I am going to begin by introducing my friend and colleague, Bonnie Klakowitz, who is going to be co-presenting with me tonight. Bonnie refers to herself as a park wife because she has been married to a park ranger since college. But Bonnie also worked at Ferrystone State Park when she was in college doing various jobs. She was a public school teacher for 32 years and an advocate for public education. And now Bonnie is going to introduce me.
Yeah, so thank you, Jessica. I'll say that Jessica is a member of the Virginia Association of Parks, as well as a friend of Mason Neck State Park. She completed Trail Quest in 2020, which means she has visited every park in Virginia. She is a former Fairfax County public school teacher, 4th grade, and always a conservation advocate. Today, she is the host of Virginia Outdoor Adventures podcast. Please listen to those. They are very, very informative. And right now, most of them are about enjoying the outdoor recreation in Virginia. And her platform is to visit and promote all of our beautiful state parks.
Thank you, Bonnie. And I should add also that Bonnie's very active at Leesylvania State Park. So let's jump into this. We're going to try to get you guys out of here very close to 7:30. So throughout this process, if you have a question, please put it in the chat box. Nancy is going to be monitoring that for us. So as questions get entered into the chat box, Nancy will let me and Bonnie know that there are questions and we'll answer them as we go along. But there hopefully will also be time at the end for questions. Uh-oh, my screen isn't moving. Okay. Let me try something else. Hang tight. Okay. Let's see. Yay. Okay. So normally what we would do is we would have people start to think about what advocacy means to you, and then we would have a discussion, but we're already a little bit behind schedule. So we're going to skip over that part, but I do want you to be thinking about what is advocacy and what does advocacy look like? Okay, Bonnie, you're up.
All right. So some examples of advocacy are communicating with your elected officials, writing letters of support, writing an op-ed to the newspaper. A lot of newspapers are online now, but you could still write a letter to the editor. Meet with the stakeholders involved. You can, the stakeholders are, of course, the people that come to your park, and ask them, why they like the park and what are some great talking points you can have when you go out then and talk to the elected officials. Utilize social media to advertise for the programs that are in your parks. Attend public meetings to advocate for your parks, and share your story. Like I have a story that I lived in a state park for over 32 years, and it was a very interesting way to grow up with my husband and children. Of course, he still isn't grown up. He's still being homeschooled, but you know, it was a good adventure.
So one more point, Bonnie, sorry.
Oh, yeah, and advocacy is ongoing. It's not just one day. It's not like Valentine's Day. We love our parks. It's like every day we love our parks. So go out there and tell everyone and contact people and begin tomorrow. You know, do what Tim said, write your legislators and say, please, you know, keep that 68 million in the budget.
Great. And why is advocacy important for parks? So first of all, advocacy raises awareness. Like Bonnie just said, it's not just one day. We want to be having these conversations year round. We want to bring these issues to people's attention on a regular basis so that when the time comes to start having conversations with legislators, people aren't just starting to think about it. They've been talking about it all along and they're eager to talk to their elected representatives about parks. And by doing that, it creates public support for the greater good. We already know that people love parks, they want parks, they need parks, but most people are completely unaware of how parks are funded. They have no idea that the General Assembly has a part in making sure that our parks are funded. So that part is up to us. We have to spread that information around and make sure that people are aware of it and that they are interested in participating in this effort. And by doing that, we are setting an example for others to get involved. This is a perfect opportunity to be talking to your neighbors, to your friends, to your family members. As you bump into people when you're at parks, wherever you go, take an opportunity to let people know how much you care about parks and what's going on right now with funding and ways that they can be involved too, to ensure that we have sustainable funding for parks. This creates a path for change. The more we get people talking, the more easily we can activate people, and our legislators, when they hear from folks, that's when they know that something is important to people. If they don't hear from people, then they just assume that this really isn't an issue, and that might not be the case at all. It might just be a case of people don't know. So we have to rely on each other to get that information out and to get people motivated. And this also seizes the moment. You know, we live in a very interesting time right now where visitation in parks is at record numbers due to the pandemic. Congress recently passed the Great Outdoors Act. You know, we've got a lot going on. There's a lot of enthusiasm around the outdoors in ways that we haven't seen recently. And so this is an excellent time to take advantage of that. Bonnie, you're up.
Okay, so there has been a very strange session in that a lot of things that we know, you know, when bills are coming out with very short notice, but all of our messaging should be around sustainable funding. And so Tim has been great about sending something out if you needed to go talk about sustainable funding. Sometimes the notice is so short and it's not his fault. It's because the committee meets and they tell you the day before. But every time, you know, that you have an opportunity to contact your senator, your delegate, or even someone in the governor's office, please talk to them about how we really need sustainable funding in our parks. And that also includes the state budget. And, you know, I could get down in the weeds in this, but cutting taxes is not the answer to supporting parks, like the food tax. So it's just very important that we get the message out and talk to anyone we can about how important that is.
Okay, so how can we do this legislative session? We need to build relationships with our legislators, and this is a perfect time to do that if you don't already have a relationship with your elected official. And there are different ways to contact your elected official. You can do it by phone, by email. Some people still do it by letter. In person is usually a good way to do it, although lately you might not want to do that if you're not comfortable, and that's okay because most legislators are still accepting virtual meetings because of our current situation. The Virginia Association for Parks will provide you with talking points so that when you're meeting with the legislator, you don't have to come up with all the facts and information on your own. In fact, it's best if we have messaging that is consistent, that we are all using the same talking points so that the legislators are hearing the same information over and over. So we will provide you with those talking points, and we're going to take a look at that in just a moment. Also, learn to tell your personal story. Remember, you are the expert about parks. If the legislators knew everything there was to know about state parks, we wouldn't need to be meeting with them, and we wouldn't need to be advocating for sustainable funding because we would already have it. But the reality is the legislators are not the authority on state parks. In fact, we are, because we are the advocates. We are the ones who volunteer in the parks. We utilize the parks. We are in the parks often. We see firsthand what's going on there. We hear from the staff what the needs are. And so we are the perfect people to tell those stories. So think about personal ways that you connect to your park, or that you know people who connect to the park, and be prepared to tell your legislators those stories, because all relationships are built on an understanding and appreciation of each other. So when we can tell stories, we then begin to relate to each other. And when we can relate to each other, we can find common grounds. And then follow up to reinforce your message. So you might have one meeting with the legislator or a legislator's aide. Sometimes the legislator isn't available and you end up meeting with the aide instead. Always let them know that you plan to follow up. That way it's not a one and done meeting where you walk out of the room or you leave the virtual meeting and that it's never thought of or talked about again. Let them know that you are going to follow up so that they take the time to think about what the points of your meeting are.
And there is a wonderful, I believe Jessica put this together, but we now have a 2022 policy brief. You can see it on the side there, but you can get a copy of this. And this is an excellent document that when you go to visit someone, you can give them this, and there are talking points, there are bullets that will give people the information they need, and it's very good for generating a conversation.
Right, and we will email this to you so that you will have it in advance. And if you're virtually meeting with the legislator, you can email it to them in advance of your meeting too, or after, whatever, or both, whatever works for you.
Yes, yeah.
And also keep in mind that it is okay to not have all the answers. If you're meeting with a legislator and they ask you a question and you don't know the answer, it is perfectly okay to say, I'm not sure, but I will find out and get back to you. So let's talk about telling your personal story. I mentioned this just a moment ago, and now we're going to expand upon it a little bit, but personal stories help build relationships, because when people hear how you connect with parks, they start to envision themselves in the same situation, connecting to parks as well. It's a more effective way to deliver a message. If you start your meeting by simply reading off facts and talking points, while those are important and you do want to use facts and talking points, the message will resonate with your legislator and they will remember it. So a lot of times we don't remember figures and numbers and facts, but we remember the story that somebody told us. So if you can open a meeting by telling a story, your legislator will start to connect with you and will remember that when this topic comes up in the future. It's also a great opportunity to persuade. So if a legislator can envision why a park is important to somebody, then they can start to see why they should also care about parks. And it also opens up the conversation. Rather than you talking at the legislator or the legislator talking at you, you can start a dialogue. Personal stories are a way to connect with people and start conversations that go back and forth so that you can openly discuss these issues. And then it's also a great opportunity to read people's reactions. So as you're having these conversations with your legislator, kind of start to feel out, is the legislator friendly to parks? Is the legislator unsure? Or is the legislator completely against sustainable funding? So this is a good opportunity to start to engage your legislator, and that's helpful information to us so that when we need to speak to legislators, we already know before we go in what we might expect to get from that legislator.
Okay, so is this my part?
Yes.
Start with your connection to the parks. Share why parks is important to you. And remember that you are the expert. You have the experience that you can explain, why it is helpful for you on a number of levels, for your health, for your mental health, just for enjoying nature. And try to find some common ground. Maybe someone has, kids. At Leesylvania, we have fishing tournaments for kids. Maybe you can talk to them about access to the water for kayaks, canoes, boats, fishing, and support your story with the talking points, the facts. And also remember, and you should maybe explain to some people what sustainable funding would mean, because they might not even get that. Like, that might just go over their head. So make sure that they know why it's important to keep all of these programs going. And we can't have these programs if we don't have enough money to run the parks. And close with an intent to follow up. Say, thank you for listening to me today, and I will be following up with an email, with a phone call, talking to your legislative aide.
Okay, so here comes the fun part. This is Tim's favorite part of the presentation. Bonnie and I are going to role play what it might look like when you meet with a legislator. Now, Bonnie and I are teachers, so if we were all together in the room right now, we would first role play and then have everybody else pair up and role play as well. But because we're doing this virtually, Bonnie and I are going to do the role play, and then we will take questions. Actually, before we do it though, Nancy, are there any questions in the chat box yet?
There's not a question, but Hillary Clausen said if you would like to support Senate Bill 30, which provides $260 million plus of funds to eliminate the maintenance backlog in all state parks, lobby members of the Natural Resource Committee, chaired by Senator Marsden, request a meeting with him, especially those in his district. She received this recommendation this afternoon from Senator Servel's office. He's sponsoring the bill.
Good information. Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you.
And Jim shared that it's amazingly, I see folks in my county that have no idea that there is a state park here, Caledon. We need to talk park all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great point. I hear that a lot too, especially up here in Fairfax County. People have no idea Mason Neck is up here, and it's probably the best hidden gem in all of Northern Virginia. So, okay, we're going to role play two different scenarios. In the first scenario, I am going to pretend to be a legislator who is friendly to parks, and I will be meeting with Bonnie, my constituent. And then in the second scenario, Bonnie will pretend to be a senator who is not so friendly to sustainable funding, and I will be the constituent. So here we go. Bonnie, thank you so much for meeting with me today. What can I do for you?
Well, okay. I am here today. Oh, thank you so much for seeing me. And thank you. You have been a great senator for us and supporting our parks. But I'm here today to tell you that we have some very specific needs that we would like you to support, like sustainable funding for our parks. We need for you to help us with people that you know who are on the finance committee and different things, so that we can get money for our parks. You know that I'm very active, my husband and I, at Leesylvania, and my husband was actually manager of Mason Neck at one time. And we know that you have a lot of interest in the parks. I believe that you take your family to several different parks. Is that correct?
That is right. I love our state parks, Bonnie. You know how I feel about them. I take the kids there all the time and we go hiking and we go fishing. I think they're fantastic. So what is it that I can do to help you with this time?
Well, there will be some bills coming up that we would like for you to support, even if you are not on the particular committee that is going to hear this. You have a lot of friends. If it makes it out of committee and onto the floor, we hope that you will support it and get your friends to support it. I just now heard that there might be a bill coming up that you may be sponsoring that will help get money for the backlog of construction issues that we've had. Is that right? Construction issues? Maintenance issues that need to be caught up, because a chunk of maintenance money that we got at one time is no longer there, due to different issues with COVID. So we would just like for you to talk about state parks when you're having lunch with the people that you hang out with up there in Richmond, and to really talk about what a wonderful experience it is for your family, and that you hope that they will support our efforts.
Well, Bonnie, I got to tell you, I support parks. I'm always behind you 100%. But my colleagues in the Senate, they don't think this stuff's important. I have conversations with them where they tell me that they don't think the maintenance issue is that big of a deal. They think it's being blown out of proportion. I don't know what to say. What can I do to help you? Tell me what I should tell them.
Well, first of all, tell them, please go to a state park. Please go, and notice the very first thing is that when they used to be able to get into state park, maybe when they were a teenager and taking their potential partner for life, that the fees were like $3. But now, because of the minimum support that we get from the state, our prices have had to go up. And to come into Leesylvania now, it is $10. And that is not good for the families that would really like to use the park. Parks need to be acceptable, or not acceptable, but to be affordable for everyone, accessible. Relative to everything. Yeah, they need to be, everyone should be able to go to a park. And the maintenance issues, we have picnic shelters that people pay to rent for birthday parties. And some of them have bathrooms that are very close by attached that are not working because we don't have the money to fix them. And they complain, that they paid X amount of money to rent a shelter, and now they have to walk, up the road from their shelter to use the bathroom facilities or a porta-john. That's the issue. It can kind of spoil some people's experience, and you don't want that to happen. You want them to enjoy every minute that they're in our parks. And the parks are also, they protect a lot of wildlife. There are areas where there's shelter for wildlife, and in the winter they grow grasses and seeds and things that will sustain birds over the winter. And there's a lot of resource management that goes on in parks that people may not be aware of. Maybe if they're not so crazy about going swimming or fishing, they might really care about the wildlife. They probably have bird feeders in their backyard, and it would be nice for them to know that the park right down the street from them is a big part of providing food for those wildlife.
Well, those are all great points, Bonnie. Do you have some information that I can take with me so that I can share it with my colleagues?
Yes, we now have a policy brief. It's bullets, some facts that could be very important for you to use for your own talking points when you talk with your friends. Excuse me. And let them, excuse me so much. Sorry. But they really need to know that money is a big issue, and they need to see, how with these talking points, how much we are underfunded. And we don't even have the staff that we need for all of our state parks. Probably we lack 300 full-time positions in our state parks. And that means we have to do a lot of reliance on, part-time helpers. So, he can have this. He can call me at any time. I'll give you my information on that. And also the phone numbers and ways that you can contact our president, Tim Kennel.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that information, Bonnie, and thank you for visiting me today. I hope I'll see you at my next event.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, so that was a pretty easy, friendly conversation with the legislator who supports parks. But unfortunately, not all legislators are going to be that easy to talk to. So we're going to demonstrate a reversal now, where I will be the constituent and Bonnie will be the senator who perhaps is not so friendly to parks. You ready for this, Bonnie? Let's do this. Senator, thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Oh, well, thank you. Please come in. I don't have a lot of time. I have, very busy, got a lot of things going on, have committee meetings. We have to be on the floor, the General Assembly, such and such a time. But, please, tell me why you're here. Thank you for coming to see me.
Well, I can appreciate how busy you all are these days, so I'm going to keep this brief and to the point. But as you know, I'm a member of the Virginia Association for Parks, and I'm also a member of the Friends of Mason Neck State Park, which is in your district. Have you been to Mason Neck lately?
I do drive by and I see a lot of cars going in, so it must be a popular place, but I haven't been in there for many, many years, maybe since the ribbon cutting.
Well, you know what? You should go sometime because it is a very popular place these days. It's so popular, in fact, that sometimes they have to close the gates on Saturday mornings around 10 when the parking is full, which is a phenomenon that we have seen during this pandemic. And people, I'll tell you what, people really want to get into those parks. They love their parks, they appreciate parks, and they want to have access to parks. So that's part of the reason why I'm here today, is to talk to you about sustainable funding. And Senator, you know that last year I completed a bucket list item to visit every Virginia State Park. It was amazing. I went to over 40 parks all across the state of Virginia, and I saw some of the most beautiful, jaw-dropping nature that you can even imagine. And Mason Neck is a perfect example of that. And I'd love to take you there one day soon if we can manage that. But unfortunately, we do have a little bit of a problem. We don't have enough funding for Virginia State Parks, and we've been underfunding our parks for years now. So unfortunately, we have a situation where we don't have enough staff. We have facilities that aren't being maintained, and the fees at the gate keep going up and up, which is making it difficult for people to get into parks. So I would love for you to support sustainable funding for parks.
So, in that area, there's a county park, regional park, and national park. And so, if people can't get into the state park and it costs too much, they can go somewhere else if they want to take a hike. But, I do see that there are probably a lot of families that do want to get into the park. And how much did you say the fees were now?
Well, I'll tell you, you bring up a really interesting point, because we are lucky up here in that we do have lots of other options, but that is not the case everywhere in Virginia. Not everybody has access to outdoor spaces. So we might be fortunate, but that doesn't mean that our friends and neighbors across the state are as fortunate as we are. And you can see by how popular the parks are with the record visitation that people still very much want to use their parks. Now, can you believe that the fees at the gate have gone from $3 all the way up to $5 and even $10 at some parks on the weekends? That's making it so that not everybody can get in. You know that I used to teach 4th grade at a Title I school, and I have seen firsthand the effects of poverty on our students and on their mental health and on their physical health. All of the research shows that the kids and adults who get outside are healthier and happier. So we shouldn't be putting fees at the gates that keep our kids and our families from being able to access parks. Everybody should have access to parks.
Well, let me ask you, I could probably, some weekend when I'm home during the session, I could probably visit the park with you, but would that mean if I come with you, I can get in free?
Well, I don't know about that, Senator. We'll have to have a different conversation about that. But I would love to take you and show you what's going on in the parks lately. And let me just give you I know you're short of time, so I'm just going to really quickly let you know what I've seen at parks, not just in Mason Neck, but all across Virginia. While we have some really beautiful parks, here's what I also saw. I saw visitor centers that were closed or had reduced hours. I pulled up to the entrance gate and there was nobody there collecting fees. And not everybody is going to be honorable with the honor system. So we're losing money at the gate. I saw education centers that were being used for storage, roads that were crumbling, bathhouses that were old and needed updating. I mean, there really are so many things that the parks could use that money for that would just continue to generate more visitation. Really, our parks are an economic generator. They are bringing in tourism. They are providing thousands of jobs to Virginians. This is really an investment in the future.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have made some really good points. But as you know, with our new governor, a whole set of priorities that is it like $385 million worth of priorities that he added to the budget. And it's been one of my responsibilities to go to agencies and ask what they can cut out of their budget. And so I will have to give this some thought. But I do see your point about how families really need to have this recreation opportunity. And, I have a grandson and my daughter live out near Westmoreland State Park, and I know that he loves to go to that pool out there. So I can relate to what you're saying about how it's a good place for families and that people really like it. I'm still going to have to look at the numbers. The numbers are going to be really tight, but I really appreciate you bringing this to my attention. And I am going to use this piece of paper and go through it and see what I can do. But I can't promise anything because session is tight and we really want to, cut as much money out of what the taxpayers are paying, for the state to do all these things. And I'll give it some thought. But thank
you. Senator, I appreciate that. And I can also appreciate how difficult some of these decisions are going to be. But I would just like to add that this really is an investment in our people, as well as in our parks. And really, if we had made this investment years ago, we might be in a different situation today. With this record visitation that we've had, we have not had the capacity to meet those needs of all of these people coming to our parks. If we had made this investment years ago, we might be in a different place today. So let's try to make up the difference and start investing in our parks so that we can have them for generations to come. We have a shortfall, you'll see in the policy brief that I'm going to leave with you. We have an annual shortfall of $111 million. That's not a little bit of money. It's a lot. And so we really need to start making up for some lost time. So I really appreciate your consideration.
Well, thank you for coming to talk to me. Visiting me in person and seeing your enthusiasm makes me understand how important this is to you. I'm sure it is to many other people. I can't promise anything, but I am really going to study the things that you've given me, and I'll see what I can do to support you if I can.
Great. If you have any questions at all, my information is here. You can also reach out to our president, Tim Kennel. His information is also on the policy brief. And I'll follow up with you and maybe next week or the week after to see if you have any further questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And if you can't get me, you can always talk to my aide. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It's very nice seeing you today. And if I can take you up on that visit, I'm going to ride with you so I can get in that park free.
Okay, so I see that things are popping up in the chat. I don't know. Nancy, are those new questions or are those the previous ones?
The only thing new was that Donna Powell wanted to make some comments. Do you want me to? I asked her to type them, but we just had that conversation. So
I think if she wants to go ahead and ask them after I finish the slide, then we can do that. How's that?
okay.
Okay. So those were two examples of conversations that you may have with legislators. So the next step is the VAFP will keep you informed of the sustainable funding process so that you know what is going on in real time in our state legislature.
Yeah.
We will also provide you the tools to support your advocacy efforts. So you will get the policy brief that you can use when you meet with legislators. And if everybody could mute themselves, please, that would be really helpful so we can all hear.
Hang on. I'll do it again. I don't know how.
Are 4 people on there. That's them.
Yeah.
So the next step would be to schedule a meeting with your legislator, with your delegate and your senator. It is important for both of them to hear from you, and you can do it virtually as well. And do invite others to join you. Don't feel like this is something you need to do by yourself. In fact, it's better if you have other people with you because it shows more support. So ask the people in your friends group or ask your neighbors or ask friends who you think might be interested in joining you. And if you can't find anyone, we are here to help. So Bonnie or I or Tim or even somebody else in VAFP who has done this before are more than happy to join you so that you are not on your own having conversations if that's not what you want to do. So thank you so much, friends, for joining us today. We'll take some questions in just a moment, but I just wanted to provide you with our email addresses so that if at any point in this process you would like to reach out to us directly and ask questions or ask us to join you in a meeting with the legislator, you know how to reach us. So Nancy, did you want to unmute person that I don't remember who it was?
Yeah, it's Donna. Hold on just a second. Okay, you should be able to unmute now, Donna.
Okay, can I talk now?
Yes. It was not Donna, it was Donna's husband. Go ahead, Bruce.
This is Bruce Powell with Chip Oak State Park and VAFP. I think Tim Kennel knows me. Okay, I got a nod, so he does. Yeah, you are hearing me. Yeah, I'm interested in doing the advocacy, and I would like, I don't mind talking with the legislators and so forth, but I feel like I don't have enough facts to go to them. And so, you know, knowing what bills are important to the VAFP and when they're coming up for committee work or votes or whatever, I need that information, and then I can work from that. But with a blank slate, it's hard to talk to anybody. So I would really like to have something in the thing that showed up here a while ago that had the 2022 issues. I'd like to have a copy of that as well. And so, you know, that gives me something I can do with. You know, my local Virginia General Assembly delegate has been very good in giving me advance notice of what bills she's supporting, when they're coming up for discussion, when we ought to, you know, when we can send emails or whatever, and when we can actually go and visit Richmond and talk to them. So, you know, that kind of information is good, but it needs to be timely. So, you know, that's my request to you guys, you know, to be a little bit more active on getting the emails out and keeping abreast of what's going on and what's important. But I think this is the first time I've heard anything from the VAFP in about a year. So, you know, that's my problem. Back to you.
Tim, would you like me to respond or do you want to respond?
Yeah, I can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm unmuted, so I didn't know. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I really appreciate you reaching out. I have your contact information and I will reach out to you. But folks that are on here will follow our website, just virginiaparks.org, virginiaparks.org. My intent, and it has been so far this session as well, is to keep members informed in what's happening. So please keep an eye out on that. Nancy Heltman helps post that on our website. Thank goodness for Nancy. And she stays up after midnight sometimes posting my letters and my comments. So if you watch that, that will be a big help, just because I can't reach out and call 4,000 people. But I appreciate your offer, and I'm not going to turn down anyone's offer to be an advocate. So I'll reach out to you personally, and I do have your email. I do want, and I know it's going a while, and but I wanted to tell you that the advocacy this session, it's always been important, but it's more important than ever, and that our park attendance has gone up so high. The wear and tear on the structures that we have, and our structures are 90 years old now, and it's tough, and deferred maintenance keeps going up. The folks keep coming, they want to come, and I want new parks too. That's important too, but we have to at least maintain our current ones. In this bill, in Governor Northam's bill, there are items like 9 more FTEs just in his bill, in his budget. Support for maintenance efforts across the parks, supporting Pocahontas, supporting Machicomico. Machicomico is one of our newer parks, and the funding of that park runs out next year. It runs out in 23. And right now there's nothing in the budget. Well, no checks coming into the park system to maintain those operations. It's in Governor Northam's budget, and we need to make sure it's in Governor Youngkin's budget. It just goes on and on, all corners of the state. New River Trail, constructions for new facilities at Westmoreland, improvements at Belle Isle. Their Sweet Run operations is a new budget amendment added. 2 more positions at Powhatan's. Widewater phase 2 and 3, so they can get some cabins and stuff up. And Lake Caledon and that group up around Caledon, what a wonderful day park that is. But it could be a beautiful, beautiful park with Lake Caledon, with cabins and campsites. And I really hope that legislation that Senator Stewart's put forth goes through, because I can imagine myself in a cabin fishing at Lake Caledon. I wanted to take a second. I am an open book. Please use my email to ask me questions. I respond generally really quick. Because I have wonderful people like Nancy Heltman and Bonnie Klakowitz and Jessica Bowser and Dr. Melissa Baker, Virginia State Parks Director, helping to put these type of advocation meetings together. And I plan on moving forward with them as long as these great helpers are out there to do so. To kind of wrap things up, as your VAFP president, I cannot begin to explain to you how happy I am and will be to represent the organization that wins the battle in the General Assembly to finally adequately fund our Virginia State Park system and truly make Virginia State Parks the envy of other state park systems in the country. And that's my mantra. I live with that every day. We need your support. It takes a village to support our park system. So as Jessica said, reach out to your neighbors. Reach out to your friends groups and your friends members. It's real simple. You don't have to be active in the General Assembly. You can just be a good citizen and write your representative and tell him to support Virginia state parks. I love it. That's all you need to do. Help fund our state parks. With that, I think that ends our presentation tonight. And on behalf of the Virginia Association for Parks, thank you for your support and the support of Virginia State Parks. Thank you very much.
Tim, I had one more question from the.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I
That's all right.
apologize. Go ahead.
Robert Sparbo wanted to know if he could have the full gallery of participants. Do you mean a list of everybody? I'm not sure if we can provide that. You can see their names if you click on the participants, but I mean, if you mean contact information, I'm not sure we can share that. Tim, what do you think?
Probably not a great idea because we didn't present that at the beginning. But you can reach out to the Virginia Association for Parks on virginiaparks.org and see our contact information there. Jessica and Bonnie are also open book. They'd be glad to help you as well.
And I did want to emphasize that all my support for VAFP is done outside my normal working hours. So I'm a volunteer, just like you guys.
You bet. Usually after
Thank you.
midnight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Was there any other questions? I don't mind taking them real quickly.
Wait, there's, yes, we have Craig Fabian. Hi, Craig. Is there anything in the state budget or bills dealing with accessibility of state cabins? New cabins are going up at many of the state parks while very few are being fully accessible.
Yep, I'm with you, my friend. If we can get funding from the General Assembly moving forward, that is what sustainable funding is about. The park system wants to move forward with programs like that. We need to make, in my opinion, we need to make our trails more accessible for folks with disabilities. Our boat ramps and more, that's a real equalizer for folks with disabilities to be able to use canoes and kayaks. That's what we're striving for. There's nothing specific in the governor's budget about it, but we're just trying to keep the roofs from leaking right now. But I sure think this is a goal we need to meet. So I'm with you, my friend, and I talk about it.
If I could just comment on what you said. I know you were talking about the possible cabins at Caledon and some of the other state parks. These cabins are going up that are not accessible. All the cabins, with the exception of one lodge at Pocahontas, is fully wheelchair accessible. We have cabins, 3 new cabins went up at Claytor Lake State Park, none of which are accessible. Having met with the commissioner, as well as the park, the planning, the cabin planning commission, basically they're not interested in making them accessible. A cabin has a 100+ year lifespan, and because of the way they're designed, cannot be retrofitted to be fully wheelchair accessible. If something isn't done now, for every cabin that goes up, you're excluding people for the next 150 years.
I'll take this. Tim, I'll take this.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Melissa, please.
That's okay, Craig. I completely hear what you're saying and I understand. And it's one of the things I noticed when I came into the Virginia State Park system. One of the things we've been working on as a division in state parks is we're building a resource management section within the division of state parks. And one of the things that section is going to be charged with is coming up with some design principles, and accessibility is going to be central to those design principles. So there will be some lag time on that because there are projects that are already spec'd out and under contract and things like that. But accessibility, we have a working group in state parks that is working on accessibility, but this resource management section that we're standing up, and in fact, we're in a recruitment process for the person that would be over the infrastructure part of that right now. One of the things they're going to be looking at is what are our design principles for when we build in state parks and what should they be? And accessibility will be a big part of that conversation.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear. And if you need any assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out. I've been working with the state parks at all levels for many years, promoting.
And I'll be right there with you. My wife has disabilities and I feel your pain. I understand. Thank you.
Thank
Were there any
you.
other questions in there?
I didn't go into chat room. This is Waltman. I just, couple of questions. You mentioned Virginia's 42 in support for parks. How do you define that? Is it the total general funding? Is it the total general, non-general funding? Is it per capita or what? You know, I think the broader issues of trying to incorporate that the state parks are part of the tourism feature, which is always encouraged. And then I have a couple of follow-on comments.
In overall state funding, Virginia Parks ranks number 42 of state parks funding that go to their state parks.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
My park's been a little bit more involved with this because I've got a little bit bigger volunteer base, but I would encourage, we only have half of the parks represented here tonight, and I would just encourage that Dory and others would reach out and make sure that the presidents know, the issues here. Number two is I'm in the process of adding a board member as my director of advocacy. I just can't do everything anymore. I need help. This is just not a battle for this assembly. It's got to be a year-end process. And maybe Jim Dillard could comment on this, but I've been more effective with trying to reach my delegates in center off of the session. If they don't know what the issues are in the center by the summer, they maybe that's when they draft legislation and staff is generating that. So I think the rules of the trade and what we need to do needs to be almost a year-end calendar. The last little question I have is I would like to have whoever, Dory, whoever, we proposed a directory of friends contact presidents, and I think that's great. But I think we need to add, the current legislators that are in that particular park area. I'm simple. I've got one delegate and I got one senator that covers all my territory. But
it's on the VAFP website, Owen. I updated the one that I sent out initially was the one from last year, but I updated that. It's on the VAFP website under what you can do or you can help.
Okay, so if I want to reach out to Senator Peterson and see what parks he's physically representing, that's on the list now. Great. Okay, thank you. All right. I don't want to take any more airtime because I know that you were looking to conclude this short, but we have a war here and it's going to take more time and we got to take more people. And I think one of the simple things is to using Tim's bullet points to incorporate that in some letters and actually draft some and pass those drafts out to some of my board members and friends and say, can you donate a 58-cent stamp and put your signature on this and mail it. But I'm looking more not just locally, but I'm looking more statewide to follow what legislator sits on what commission, both committee rather, both on the House and the Senate side. And my challenge is that on both houses, looking at the natural Resources Conservation Committee. I don't have anybody from my area, so I have to reach out and seek an opportunity to talk to Senator Hanger or others. And I'm not making it partisan, but they have to understand the need that we have in the parks. So thank you all. Good to see you.
Owen, thank you very much. If we had 300 more people just like you, we'd have this thing licked already. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you couldn't afford my salary.
Or mine. I'm almost up to nothing now.
That's right.
Jim, this is Harvey Morgan, and I'd like to ask if there's any money in the governor's introduced budget for parks, for new parks. I'm thinking of Middle Peninsula and Machu Comico that have been on the books for a long time, but never any funding.
Right. The governor, Governor Youngkin, just recently has been talking about a $5 million donation for a new park. Nancy, help me out. Do you remember?
Brandy Station Battlefield.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Brandy Station Battlefield. Yeah, thank you. So they're looking there. That just popped up, but there'll be new parks. Legislators love to cut ribbons on those, but it's our job. We have to have people cleaning cabins, cleaning roads, campsites, building docks, fixing electrical problems, HVAC systems, plumbing systems. We need that too. And it's a harder sell to legislator. You know, they like standing in front with a gold shovel and a ribbon to cut in front of a new park, and that's a great thing. It's harder to get them to stand in front of a gold shovel and a ribbon in front of a whole new fleet of lawnmowers. So that's what we're here to do, is to try to push that along. So I need your help. The parks need your help. We have some great advocates online that I believe will do that. So thank you very much. Yeah, Jim.
First of all, I've got to say hello to my friend, former compatriot, Delegate Harvey Morgan. We fought a few battles together, but I want to emphasize what Owen had said earlier about the time to actually work your legislator is not during the session, but in the spring and in the summer and in September, before they actually go down to Richmond. The other thing that I think is important in working with your legislator is that you make a small contribution. If you make a small contribution, you're on their website and their email list. And that gives you a whole lot better access to what they're doing, because they will keep you informed through emails. And it'll also say, you may not remember me, but I made a small contribution to your campaign last year, and I was wondering if I might have a chance to chat with you a little bit. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
It's a good 2 cents. It's a good 2 cents. And Harvey, it's great to have you online with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
I bet that was a pair up there in the house. My goodness.
That's good. Yeah. So I had my hand raised. If I would just want to say to the people that just spoke. So Jim and I have been thinking that we started out at wonderful regional meetings with a regional district, and I know that we were in Regional District 2, and we met at Caledon. We did a lot of good planning, and we think that would be the place to get people to decide if they just love their park and they want to take care of the park gardens, which is wonderful. We need all those services. Or if they really want to be on the advocacy team. And we could team up. And just like Jim Dillard said, you know, Jim and I are ready to go on a road trip as soon as it's safe. And we will go with people and meet with legislators and say, you know, this is what we need. It needs to be a year-round effort. And we had begun that, and then COVID hit and all of that, you know, went by. But this is an opportunity for us to bring that back up, hopefully, as things get better. And we are committed to that. And, you know, we think that we need to take our show on the road. So just wanted to mention that's something we have in mind also.
Thank you, Bonnie. I'm with you 100%.
Owen, you asked a question, where can you find that list? If you go to the VAFP website and you go on the tab called You Can Help and scroll down right and above the green word that says volunteer, there's 2 paragraphs above that. It says find legislators that represent districts with state parks here. That was updated after the one I initially put on. I just replaced the wrong one with the more current one. So it's the same place the other one was.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Nancy.
Wanted to
Were there any
briefly
other
comment, if I may.
questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly comment. This
Hi,
is
Dory.
Hi, how are you? It's good to
Hi,
see
good
everyone.
to see you. Good to see you.
So I wanted to comment. Owen mentioned the Friends President's Directory that I created, and the point was so that you could share among yourselves. So now that you have a list of all the email addresses, Owen, please feel free to pass around any of that information you have or request it so that all the resources that the presidents have can be shared among you. You can also request that they share announcements or information with their members, which they can pass along.
Okay, good
Thank
part.
you, Dory.
Going to
And they
build
can
on that.
pass along. Yep. And they can pass along information to me, to the VAFP, and we'll make sure that's shared as well. So I appreciate that. These are all fantastic comments. Thank you. Does anyone have anything else this evening? Well, look, thank you. Again, I can't thank you enough for your support, both the VAFP, 4 state parks, and God bless you. Keep moving on, keep plugging for our state parks. Everyone have a great evening. Thank you so much.
Good night,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.
Night.